G'day, Stu from the Wave Church in Ocean Grove here. Hey, we're just a medium-sized coastal church, but we've realised that we have so many people in our church family that have had their lives radically transformed for the better. So we just want to share some of these stories with you because we believe that they bring hope in a really hard time. Hope you enjoy them. G'day everyone, welcome. On your screens you can see an amazing couple. Their names are Cam and Vanessa Sawyer, and they're going to be sharing their story with us tonight, and I'm really excited. It's an interesting story. It's a different story about how they got together, and it's probably not your average story about how two people find each other. So we're going to hear from these guys, and I believe it's going to be really encouraging. Thanks for joining us, guys.
All right.
Thanks.
Great to be here.
For having you here.
Awesome. Hey, so tell us, your story of getting together is really different. When did it start? Where did it start? How'd you guys meet?
Well, Ness and I met about 25 years ago. Oh, longer than that.
30
years ago at a youth group. So we used to get out together in youth group. We'd go camps together, lead on camps together. I had a crush on her. I think she had a crush on me.
Probably.
Kind of. Maybe not all. Sort of. But we we met in youth group. And then we went our separate ways and didn't see each other for about 10 years. And then we saw each other at a basketball carnival. In fact, I was on holidays that week and I had a pastor that came up to me and said to me, "I believe God's told me that you're going to meet your wife on your holidays." And I hadn't seen Ness for 10 years. And we met again at this basketball carnival and spent some time together. The only issue is we got married 15 years later. 15 years later. So we knew each other's kids, didn't see each other for 10 years. God spoke prophetically to someone to me. I didn't know what to do with that. I didn't know if that meant it was Vanessa. I had it in my back of my mind the whole time. And yet still 15 years later, that's when we got married. So it's quite a story.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, and just cutting to the end, just you've forgiven him for that one, Vanessa?
There was a whole lot more to forgive him for than that one. So, that was just, I didn't even know, I actually didn't know about that until tonight when he told me. So.
Wow, it's all coming out. All right, well, so guys, tell us, what's the deal? Why was that? Why was there 15 years? Start when you need to start. Go for it.
Well, I never thought it was an issue of obedience. I wasn't ever feeling that I was disobeying God. It wasn't like that at all. It wasn't like I felt God tell me I'm going to marry Vanessa. The struggle for me, and this may not make sense to a lot of people. They may not understand it. They may not get it. But I struggled a lot with OCD, compulsive thinking. And I have a history of being able to make a decision about major things and then back out because I overanalyze it. I overthink about it. It's quite intense. It's a full-on experience for me. And Ness and I spent quite a lot of time together over those 15 years, and I just kept moving away. I just kept overanalyzing. I just kept on putting it off. And then I'd move towards her because I'd miss her. And she meant something to me, and something was growing inside of me for her. But then I'd push her away again because I overanalyzed it. God's not in this. This isn't right. All that kind of stuff. And so at the end of the day, it took 15 years for me to get around to the point of saying, "Vanessa, will you marry me?" You might need to ask Vanessa why she hung around for so long, I think. Why did you?
I think real practicalities in that time as well. Cam lived in South Australia. I lived in Victoria. So we would connect when we were at the carnivals. And we were like magnets. So when we were in the same space together, we would gravitate towards each other. And, you know, he says, well, did I have a crush on him at the time? But in my head, he was always, even when we weren't together, he was my Cameron. Like for me, he was the guy I thought I was meant to be with, even when he was in his question mark space. But then we would spend these blocks of time together when he'd go to Melbourne, or if I ended up in Adelaide, I went up there to do a course, and the same scenario would happen. There were probably a couple of significant moments. One of them was, so once we had, you know, explored the option of doing relationship together, I actually took 8 weeks of long service leave from my job down here and went and lived in Adelaide. And he was a pastor up there at the time, and tried to do life together and meet some of his world. And at the end of it, he said that he just wasn't feeling it. And I drove home very lonely and sad from Adelaide in my 8 hours. He actually,
Wow.
I've done that twice. I've driven home from Adelaide after Cam broke my heart. So
Tell us about the other time.
You know, I have to admit, it's funny. It's good to hear it, but it hurts my heart when I hear it. It's not it's not like I'm broken about it, but it just makes me go, I can't believe that I hurt Ness so often, so much. So what was the next time?
So the most significant time, it was 8 years ago. It was 8 years ago now, I think. So, and we were at an Adelaide carnival.
Basketball carnival.
Basketball carnival. And bearing in mind that Cam was the man that I thought I was meant to be with, and I'd really wrestled with singleness. So at this stage, I'm just trying to think. We got married when I was 41. So I was about 37 then. And singleness had been a massive battle for me. And God had been faithful, and I was surrounded by beautiful people, but I was still, you know, just had that heart's desire. And so, like always, we were magnets. Cam had spent some time in Melbourne. We went to Adelaide. We were playing the basketball carnival. I hung out together, and we went for a walk one day. We're up on the top of a hill, and Cam goes, let's not try and go out again. We've done that before. Let's just get married. And my heart went, oh, Cam, my Cameron. And I crazily said yes. Who says yes in that scenario? And so we walked down the hill, and I'm thinking we'll just keep this quiet. And he declared it to everyone, we're engaged. So we went through this process of being engaged.
And they announced it there were 200 people at this carnival, and they announced it to everyone that we got engaged. So it was a big deal. It was so public. The problem is my OCD kicked in and I freaked out. And 2 days later, I broke it off again with Ness. So I had this history of breaking it up over and over again. We kept coming together, and then I finally said, let's just get married. And then 2 days later, I broke her heart, and she had to drive back to Adelaide with the whole team, back to Melbourne with the whole team, and I stayed in Adelaide.
What's going through your head, Cam? Like when you're over analysing things, what sort of thoughts in that situation?
It's just it was, I would say, high level anxiety, really anxious, really anxiety at a not just, oh yeah, I'm feeling a bit anxious today, to the point where I can't eat, and I just think I'm making the mistake, I'm doing the wrong thing, God's not in this.
I love her.
Big thing was, do I love her? What is love? How do you know when you love someone? Because I'm not the type of guy that just feels love all the time. So I doubted if I loved her again. And then the story came back. I ended up having to go to Melbourne and processing that with her, and you know, all that kind of stuff. And then I come back to Adelaide, and then I had this dream one day where I was on roller skates, and I was going from one place to the other on roller skates, and I woke up, I didn't know what it meant, but I felt like God said some change is going to happen very quickly. And so I come back to Melbourne for a holiday, and within a week of being in Melbourne, I think the Lord said, it's time for you to come back to Melbourne. I ring up Ness and I say, Ness, I'm moving back to Melbourne, at which point she swore, because she just didn't know what to do with that. Cameron's going to be present again, close to me. And I went back to Adelaide, packed up my stuff and came back within a week. And I was back in Melbourne living. Once again,
I'll just speak into that. Bearing in mind that I actually worked with Cam's identical twin brother. So whilst I did life and had healed and regrouped from that failed engagement, I still saw Cam every week because I saw him in Jay. So, and he was a great friend of mine. But so when Cam came back to Melbourne, obviously my world was basketball and sports ministry, working alongside Jay. And obviously Cam they were brothers. They wanted to connect. And so Cam came and instantaneous, he didn't stay away from my space. He was there and present pretty much.
This story just keeps getting crazier. Can I just ask, Nessa, this is a personal question, so you can say pass. Were you kind of like thinking that Cam was the one, or were you interested in other guys, or was there other people on scene, or were you just waiting for him?
No, through the years, definitely after the failed engagement, my heart still remained true to this man. It was hard. Prior to that, I had been in relationships with other guys briefly, but there was always Cam in the back of my head. He was always just kind of that person I knew was there, and that I always cared for. Yeah.
Had you given up hope, or were you still hopeful?
I was still madly hopeful, even after. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Sorry, carry on. Thanks.
I'm her Cameron. And then we kind of just kept seeing each other, and so we ended up spending time with each other again. And I didn't know what to do with that. Some people should say by that time you should just move on, and I agree with that. I think sometimes you've got to move on. But we even went to see a counsellor, a Christian lady, and we wanted to ask this lady just to help us move on.
To bring closure.
To bring closure to just this kind of cycle. And she turned around, I couldn't believe it. She turned around and said, I don't think this relationship is over. That is the worst counselling you could ever, like that's not cool. She said, I don't think this relationship is over. And I just went, that is not why we've come here. You know, come on. Anyway, we left that going, are you kidding me? Like, it just wasn't closure. And at that point...
he left saying, are you kidding me? Probably a little part in my brain was like, oh, maybe. Come on. Yeah, she's on my side. Yeah, I don't know.
I couldn't believe it, but...
Did you or did you not bribe her, Vanessa?
I didn't, I promise.
So Ness and I just continued to hang out. And at that time, I started hanging out with one of the pastors at Crossway Baptist, a good friend of mine. And I would meet with him every single week. And the main thing I'd be talking to him about is, how do I process OCD? How do I process pain? How do I process not knowing that I love this girl, and yet every time we move on, we just keep getting drawn back together. And he just kept saying to me, Cameron, I think you love her. Cameron, I think you love her. Cameron, I think you love her. And he had to say that to me 1,000 times. And one of the things that's come out as I think about that is that I got through that moment because I had a friend of mine who he really kind of discipled me into it, if that makes any sense. And I said to Ness before, you know, Christianity, my Christian walk, it's very personal, but it's not private. And my story is that when I involve people into my life, I do really, really well spiritually. But if I start alienating people from my world, Christians and stuff, I don't do well at all. I need people. And so this guy actually tangibly helped me, process stuff, and just kept saying, Cam, I believe you love it. Then eventually we got to the point where I said, I'm going to ask her to marry me again. And I did it properly this time, took her out, did it properly. And 5 weeks later, we were married. We had a very quick, just because of the struggle.
Not just his struggle, my struggle.
Yeah.
Like the thought of being engaged again after the first time. It needed, yeah.
Did those thoughts come, Cam?
Sorry?
That second. Did those thoughts come again?
Not that time.
Not that time. Okay.
I don't know why, but it suddenly had broken. We had a quick, engagement. But the most exciting thing is probably when Ness and I went back to Adelaide together to play in the same basketball carnival where I broke up with her 4 years before. Wow. So a lot of the same people were there, and so it was in the same stadium, and Ness and I were the speakers. And Ness spoke about where is God in pain, and I spoke about where is God when you screw up, when you hurt and make mistakes and you hurt people, and where God redeemed our story very publicly, from a place of real brokenness publicly. Yeah.
Can you share more about that? I guess that's what a lot of people would like to know next is, was there baggage? Was there pain? How'd you go with that? Did you feel like you'd missed out on a portion of your life? Like all that kind of stuff?
Because we got married so late?
Oh yeah, like because it could have been earlier. You could have been, yeah.
Yes, yeah, it does. Particularly, I don't know if I can mention kids stuff.
Oh yeah, true.
One of the biggest things for us is children. We've tried to have kids. We lost a baby. We tried IVF. That didn't work. And probably at the end of the day, one of the main reasons is because we got married so late. So, where is God in the midst of that pain? Where is God in the midst particularly for Ness, in the midst of that pain? And thing is, I guess we just keep choosing God in the midst of not having answers. We keep choosing God, and I think that's the key for us. Is that no matter what happens, we just keep choosing God.
Yeah.
Every day.
Yeah. Yeah. How is it for you, Ness, with the kids stuff, just in general?
Yeah, I think Cam talks about being, needing community to do it, and he needed Mark and to do the story and the journey with him. I just had a real not a revelation, but I think as I reflect back, I'm always amazingly thankful. I see God's faithfulness. Obviously, there's pain. Oh my goodness! I mean, it took me out. But when we had our failed engagement, I was absolutely just undone by it. But I was also just blown away by how God surrounded me with people. And so for me, Cam needed to seek out community. I feel like God placed community around me. So he gave me so many big brothers, just safe relationships through my girlfriends and their husbands who just surrounded me. So where I lacked the man in my world, he actually gave me men to care for me in really beautiful Christian community. And I see his faithfulness. Usually when I reflect that back, I end up tearing up because he just blew me away with the people he brought into my world to care for me through that time. So it was a crazy journey, but he kept me strong. And, I remember saying multiple times, because I did actually put a ban the first 2 weeks after our engagement went kaput. I would only let people into my world if they didn't talk about it. So I just created a big clause. You can come and see me, but I just don't want to talk it for a couple of weeks. But then I slowly did. And I just said, this will either make me or break me. I can either let it define me for good or for bad, and so I really wanted it to be a story that I could tell that was redeemed. I didn't know it was going to be redeemed, through a successful marriage down the track, but I just wanted to really honour God still in the midst of it as well. And he just gave me, like the basketball community, he gave me so much in amongst it. It's much easier in hindsight to look back and be able to see it, but it was still really special the way he surrounded me at that time.
Yeah, cool. We had a question come in around children. When you're referring to children, you're talking about are you talking about the ones it's been hard for you to have kids because you've waited?
So I've sometimes turned around to Cam, and he'd jokingly say, well, it's my fault, if we had have got married 20 years ago, and we'll never know whether that wrestle to have children now. My first thought would say that age is a contributing factor to it, but who knows what we would have, how successful we would have been if it was 10, 20 years ago. But we'll never know.
Okay. Does that does any of that old pain ever rise up even today or over the last few years? Is that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really does.
Yeah.
Because it is pain. God doesn't remove your humanity, and so it is part of who we are. I just think. I think a lot of the scriptures and psalms is often about lamenting. I think we worship, we lament with God. We don't try and hide from it. It's part of our journey, and Ness will every now and then cry over it, just because she sees something on TV or hears a story, but she doesn't get bitter because she's a worshipper. She loves God. And we are absolutely convinced of God's love. Absolutely convinced of his love. And I think we're absolutely convinced of his presence. He'll never leave us. I think that's actually the most important promise that we have, that he'll never leave us. That's a complete absolute in our lives. And I think we're convinced by that.
Yep.
In the context of pain.
Yep.
I think when we moved down here to Ocean Grove, I definitely think God was in that, because we've only been married 4 years. And so because we got married so quickly, prior to me being married and suddenly having Cam in my world, I was this single chick. Had a solid community around me, and I in no way depended on Cam at all. I wasn't practiced in that. In fact, my experiences of depending on Cam had actually been not great. So then we get married and suddenly he's meant to be my person. But when we were in Melbourne, I think by default, I still really clung to the community that was around me because that was my safe network. And then we came down here, and it was a really healthy step for us, because suddenly we established home together, just the two of us. And I had to be 100% dependent on the guy that, he was now my husband. So it took some practice and time, but it was definitely, it was definitely God-given to have that space to do so. Yeah.
Wow. Yep. Wow. Cam, there's a question. How are you going with the OCD stuff? And where's God's sort of place in all of that in your journey with OCD?
I find this really a bit nerve-wracking to talk about, because I don't know what people's theology is. I don't think God's fixed it. I'm on medication for it, and that keeps it at bay. Where is God in it? He's always in it. He's just in the midst of it.
Yeah.
And there are times where I'm sitting on the couch and I've gone all quiet, and Ness turns to me and says, "What's going on?" And I'll say to her, "Remember that thought I had 2 weeks ago?" "Yeah." "Well, it's still bugging me." It's a battle in my mind. And in those moments, to be honest, you say, where's God in it? it's really about that friend I said that walked the journey with me before I got married. He's in my world now, and we call each other 3 to 4 times a week. And I'd probably share with him some of the struggles, and he knows me so well that he'll actually disciple me through it.
Yep.
So again, it comes to the fact that I need community.
Yep.
I can't be isolated.
Yep.
Because when you struggle internally with a whole lot of stuff and you isolate yourself, well, it actually just gets worse. So I actually spend more time talking to a friend who's a, godly guy than I do praying about that stuff.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that's good or not. But I do. I need people. I walk with
Right.
people.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Another question's come in. Do you feel like you've have let go of the possibility of having kids? So now I know that's a personal one. So.
Okay, here you go. Every week, every month, no.
Okay.
Every month
It's nature, right?
Every month in Ness and I, if Ness gets her period, there's just a small part of me that says, "Oh, bugger."
Yeah.
And Ness says, "What a bugger." And we just reminded a little bit. And we say, "It hurts this time more than last time."
Yeah.
Well, sometimes it doesn't hurt at all. We're okay. But sometimes we just grieve.
Yeah.
And that's okay. And I just hug my wife and she just hugs me. And then we get on with our life, put on worship music and push on.
Cool. How has that been for you guys, the whole aspect of worship and all this? It seems like a theme that's coming through. When there's hardship, you're able just to turn to something. So can you talk to that? I mean, I guess firstly, how would you go if God wasn't in your life in all of this? And how do you keep doing it? How do you just keep turning to God, turning to relationship with him?
We would often turn to each other and say, how do people do life without Jesus? It's just, we do ask that question a lot. I can't even comprehend it. My go-to is just to worship. And when my heart cries and when I feel it, I don't always. Sometimes I'm just a big sook and I just go to sleep and snuggle up in my bed. But I don't know. Cam will often just find me worshipping. I think that's just it's my healing balm.
I think Ness has got this unbelievable ability to be able to hold the tension of pain, but intimacy with God together. And sometimes I think we get pain and we get cynical or resentful or bitter or whatever. Somehow Ness goes, "I'm in pain, but I love Jesus." And somehow that all fits. And I don't even know how that works, but somehow.
But aren't there's some beautiful songs out there that almost enable you to do that, like a Mercy Me song that says, even if you don't take this pain away, I will continue to worship you. Like, I think it's people who have written other songs songs in similar situations help guide you to God. It's almost, and so using those things really helps as well.
Cool.
I think for me, Stu, I often talk about this with the boys at Foundo, but I have this thought that my wife is not my absolute. She's my good. My career is not my absolute. It's what's good. My having potential children isn't my absolute. It's what's good. If it was my absolute, I'd fall to pieces.
Yep.
Jesus is my absolute. And he's with me all the time. He's my absolute. So you say, how do you focus with, how do you deal with this stuff? Well, you just make sure that those things aren't your absolutes. They're the good things. If you have them, they're good. But if Jesus is your absolute, he's your rock. And it comes down to that. Who are you living for?
Yep.
Yeah.
Awesome.
When we did our pre-marriage counselling, the guy who married us said that he'd never had two people going into marriage with such a realistic approach of what it is, that we weren't going to complete each other. There was he's like, there's no rose-coloured glasses here. You guys realise that you're not going to get everything from the other one. And I think we're pretty united in that, hey?
Yeah.
We don't expect everything from the other. We encourage each other to look to God in that. Yeah.
Awesome. That's awesome. Does that happen just kind of organically and naturally in your relationship, or do you have any kind of rhythms or routines of pointing each other to Jesus?
Well, Ness is a worshipper. I'm a Bible reader. I often would look at Ness and say, "Did you know the Scripture says this? What do you think of this? This is amazing." And so meditating on Scripture is massive for me.
Yep.
Being able to sit still is massive for me before God. I often find that by being still long enough, God eventually speaks. It doesn't always, but they're deal breakers for me. You take that stuff away, and yeah.
We talk. We're good communicators,
Yeah.
so we don't sit on stuff we might have our moments, but in general, I think communication is massive for us. Yeah.
We talk a lot.
We feel it, we talk it. Yeah.
Okay.
Which really helps.
Wow, that's great.
Mm.
So, in society today, in the church, outside of the church, singleness is a big thing. A majority of people would want a partner. They want someone to do life with, to connect with. And people are going after that, I guess, in different ways, and some healthy, some not healthy. What would you say to singles? What would you say to them?
What would you say?
Well, for me, I would say stay the course. God is faithful. Keep your eyes out for the way that he hugs you and loves you outside of a relationship, how he fills the voids that you might feel, and allow him to do so. So don't keep tunneled vision on that relationship goal, but keep your eyes open to the different ways that those emotional needs can be met. Just stay focused on him. Yeah, that it's not going to be straightforward and easy, and that it hurts, and seek out people that you can share your hurt with, and allow yourself to do relationship with singles, with marrieds, with families, even though sometimes doing time with people who are married and people who have families can hurt. There's actually a whole lot of love and healing and support that can come from those as well, and to actually press into it in spite of maybe your urge to tuck yourself away sometimes. Yeah.
I'd say don't compromise. I've seen probably the main thing that stops younger people potentially from continually walking with the Lord is a relationship with someone who's not a Christian. And I go, don't compromise that. And the other thing I'd say is, and it's exactly
just interrupting. Why compromise?
Well, at the end of the day, we're called to be followers of Jesus. Bottom line is, the bottom line is God calls us to obedience.
Yeah.
And how do you obey when you're married to a non-Christian? That's just difficult. I'm not saying it can't be done. A lot of people do it, and I actually take my hats off to people who do it. It's fantastic. But I would actually encourage people to say obedience to God is my top priority. It comes back to the issue of what's your ultimate. Don't make marriage your ultimate.
Yeah.
Make it a good thing. It's a good thing to aim for, but don't make it your ultimate. If it becomes your ultimate, you eventually will compromise. And it's a challenging statement, but that's what I think.
Can I say in that, just to be really honest, at one of my less strong patches as a single chick, I remember saying to one of my friends, I am on my own and I am doing my relationship with God on my own anyway. So why not, just so I've got a buddy in my world, what does it matter if they're Christian or non-Christian? I'll just keep doing my relationship with God on my own, but have someone who's matched in a whole lot of ways to keep me company, but I'll just keep doing that. And then when I married Cam, I realized how mad that idea was, that actually to do relationship with someone who, you do relationship with God together collectively, the two of you. I couldn't imagine doing my relationship with God just on my own in a marriage now. But at that time when I was just crying out for companionship, you come up with crazy ideas that you think are going to work. But thank goodness I never put that choice into play that I was blessed with. Yeah.
Cool.
I also, Stu, to be honest, and again, I'm not even sure if this helps, but there's not a day that goes by that I actually don't think of heaven and eternity. And I actually think we need to hold on to that there is pain sometimes. Sometimes we don't get married. Sometimes we don't get what we want. A lot of the times we do, but sometimes we don't. I think God says, fix your eyes on things above and fix your eyes on eternity. One day, all the pain will be over. All the questions will be not there anymore. You'll have your answers. And God will say, well done, good and faithful servant. And I actually believe that God would call people who are single for them to have their highest priority is not to find someone, but to have Jesus say to them, well done, good and faithful servant. You were faithful to me in this area of your life. Well done. And I think Jesus, that's what he's looking for, people who he can say that to in that area of their life.
Yep. Do you ever think about what life would be like and what you guys would be like if you weren't together, if you were still single?
I'm better with Ness. Most things in my life I think have improved by being with Ness. Hope she'd say the same. She'd say some things.
Two 40-something-year-olds getting together in marriage, definitely it's different, than getting married in your 20s, that's for sure. Like, you come with a whole lot more set in your ways. I'm sure we did a lot of compromise and a lot of adjustment. So in that way, I go, oh, golly, I could have I'd had some pretty good stuff set in place, but no regrets.
I don't have any regrets. It's a challenge. Ness challenges me every day. I've married up. There's no doubt that I've married up. So Ness is actually better than, and this isn't me being falsely humble, Ness is actually better than me at most things. And so I have to, so marriage for me is a good thing. It's made me a better person. It's made me a better person.
Yep. Okay. For those listening in, keep the questions coming. I've got one. Oh, I guess. I'll ask this. When you said before you had a lot of anxiety, Cam, around God's not in it. Oh, maybe God's not in this. Maybe God's not in this. I think, and maybe not to the same degree as you, but I think that's a really common one for Christians. It's almost like we've got this added thing we have to worry about in some ways, because other people, they can just think about whatever and just act on whatever, but we really want to obey God. We want to do the right thing because we love him and we trust him. But sometimes there can, even definitely in my own life, like there can be some worry and anxiety around that. Am I making the right decision here in God's eyes? Can you speak to that at all? Should we be worrying to the same degree that we do about that, or what's the
Probably
difference?
not. It's a difficult one, because I think God sometimes, he says, when you're asking something, he goes, you choose, you decide, I'm with you, make a wise decision. And then there are other times where he says, no, I need you to walk this path of obedience. I think it can be both and. And so it's a challenge to wrestle through, where is God in it? It's hard, because I really, really believe that God speaks. And I really, really believe that God does impress on people which way to go. He promises in his scripture that he will guide you and counsel you in which way you should go. So I just simply encourage people to do two things: pray, listen, then talk to people. Just continue to talk to wise people who can walk the journey with you. I think you need both. They've got to go together. And my journey has been sometimes where God has spoken to me very clearly and I've been obedient. And there have been other times where I've had to walk with people who have helped me through it. We need people. I'm not super spiritual about this stuff. I'm just more practical. I just need people to help me through it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Awesome. Yeah. Cool. Thank you. Tell us what are you excited about at the moment in life? What gets you pumped? What are you living for?
Well, I struggle at my work at times, but I love my work because I get to tell people about Jesus. And you take that away from me, and I think working in the drug and alcohol part, it would be very hard. You take away a whole lot of hope. And I think that's what gets me pumped is seeing people, just talking to people about Jesus. I love it. And that's the thing that probably stirs me most deeply.
Yeah, awesome.
I'm wrestling with that a little bit more at the moment. I probably don't have a really straightforward answer.
Yeah.
I am always passionate about my friends and family, but right now I would say that I am sitting in a bit of an unknown space. I'm nursing and doing it because it's what I do, but I'm very much in a period of saying, hey, Lord, I feel like you've got more for me. What is that? Can you show me? So, yeah, I'm probably in a bit more of a contemplative space. Yeah.
That's fine. Cool. Cam, just briefly, you said you love just sharing Jesus with people. If someone somehow kind of is listening to this video right now and half the stuff hasn't made sense because they haven't really grown up in a faith background, what can you talk to them about Jesus, I guess, and connect that with his story, I guess, if that's okay?
What I'd probably say is that Jesus loves you deeply, that he loves you more than you know it. He knows you better than you know yourself, and he still accepts you just the way you are. I would talk to you about how Jesus died on the cross for you. And I think one of the greatest needs, and probably the greatest need that people have, is to know that they're actually forgiven. And that if we're really, really, really honest with ourselves, we have parts of ourselves that we don't like. And Jesus says, hey, I forgive you. And then I'd say, and the Christian walk is a very exciting one, where you're supposed to be on an adventure, knowing God who loves you, knowing that God is with you, and learning to go, what does it mean for me to follow a Jesus that says, I love you? A Jesus that says, I'll never leave you. I'm always, always, always with you. That's what I'd say.
Okay, cool. Thank you. We might finish on that. We'll do a few more questions from other people, but we might just finish on that for the recording and just say thanks so much, guys. Amazing. We just appreciate your vulnerability and your honesty in that. And I know, because just knowing your guys' hearts, if you're watching this video and you really think, I really want to have a chat with these guys, we can make that happen. There'll be details that you guys can follow with that. But so appreciate that. Hey guys, awesome. Thanks for watching. We hope you enjoyed that. We just want you to know that we're praying for our community in this time. And if there's anything in this video that resonated with you, we'd love to connect with you more. Here's the ways that you can do that.